What up guys, it is Justice here, and with the release of the Elf City Batch 2, it brought us the Supreme Overload, which in this video I'm going to be reviewing in comparison to the normal Overload. Is it worth the effort making it, and is it as supreme as it sounds? Well, we're going to find out in this video. So it requires 98 Herbalore to make. You can purchase the potion from the Maya clan camp in the Elf City. I don't know whether I pronounced that right, but it costs 900k to purchase the recipe. Once you've unlocked it and you can make it. It requires a 4-dose overload and a 4-dose from each potion, which is part of the superset. And once you combine those with a crystal flask, which is only 2.5k at the moment in the GE, once you've combined all of that, you create the Supreme Overload. Now, quite an interesting fact, obviously it only requires 4 doses of overload there, so you're actually saving a bit of cost, because once you make the flask, it does create a 6-dose flask, so you're saving 2 overload doses there whilst you're making this Supreme Overload. There is a change now as well with overload doses, where each dose will now last for 6 minutes rather than 5. That is also comparable to the normal overload flask, which does the same effect now. An extra minute has been added to each dose when drank. And interesting fact, crystal flasks at the moment are cheaper in game than normal potion flasks, so in comparison, again, saving money when you're making the Supreme Overload. So what does the Supreme Overload actually do? Well, I put it into testing today at Virago and Rise of the 6, and the Supreme Overload, it gives, let's say you're a 99 in a skill, combat skill, it will give you an additional +2 levels within that skill compared to the Overload. So normal Overload will boost your skills up to 116, a Supreme Overload will boost up to 118. Well, what does that actually mean in terms of DPS output? Well, those extra 2 levels strongly influence both your accuracy and your damage, that's your base ability damage, and both of those put together make up your DPS overall. So in terms of comparing normal overload to Supreme Overload, these are just approximate figures. I've rounded up all the figures, and the way you worked it out is by just going onto your loadout, maxing out, let's say in a mage class gear setup, so with just pure tier 90 armor, etc., maxing out your gear, and then looking on the loadout, looking on the accuracy stats and the base ability damage stats. When you compare normal overload to Supreme, the accuracy boost between normal and Supreme is around 2%, and then with the damage, base ability damage, it's around 1% as well. So if you put those two together, the overall DPS boost from a normal overload to a Supreme Overload is 3%, and that 3% DPS overall boost is highly significant when you look at the boost which just gloves and boots give to you, which approximately that 3% extra boost from normal to Supreme is more than what your gloves and boots give you combined. So yeah, it's highly significant. That extra 3% does go a long way, and at Rise of the 6 when I was using the Supreme Overload, god, that accuracy, that 2% accuracy, it just seems to make a huge difference, and it's definitely worthwhile getting. If you're carrying out a tanking role, and potentially Holy Overloads will be your better option, and again I'll be making another video on that. Alright, so is it worth getting the Supreme Overloads? It completely depends on your play style. 2 different things to consider. Number 1, if you're a person who wants to max out your gear, you try and max out, you've got Superior Elite Void already, you've got your tier 80 Nex boots instead of Glaker's boots, which are tanking gear. If you're a person who wants to DPS and have the very best gear in the game, then you should put the effort in to make Supreme Overload. Also, if you're a person, to be honest, who is carrying out a DPS role in general and you want to make it easier for you to deal more damage, then again get Supreme Overloads, because it's making it easier for you. It's giving you an extra 3% DPS overall, and that 3% overall across the whole boss fight does add up significantly. Like I said, it's like wearing power armor for your gloves and boots combined, so definitely worthwhile putting that extra effort in. It's a bit tedious, but what do you expect when it is a level 98 Herbalore requirement? I mean, overloads, you could get those at level 91 essentially with the brown spice boost, but let's say they're level 96, aren't they? These are an additional extra 2 levels which you've got to gain as a player to be able to make. And yes, if you haven't got 98 Herbalore, you do need that requirement. You cannot just buy these Supreme Overloads from the GE. You need to purchase the recipe and then make them yourself. There are 2 main ways in which you can boost your Herbalore level in order to make the Supreme Overload. If you're level 96 Herbalore, you can boost with the Green Man Ale Matured, which boosts your Herbalore level by +2, allowing you to make the Supreme Overload. There is a second way as well, from 5 levels down. However, it's a very tedious process. That is the Spicy Stew process with brown spice, and you could do that theoretically from level 93 Herbalore. But those are 2 methods which you can use. Research them, they are worth doing. That's what I did all the way up from 91 Herbalore to 96. So and you can make 10 Supreme Overloads fairly quickly, and that's lasting you for over 5 hours of pure combat. But yeah guys, overall, at Virago, if you're in larger teams, it probably isn't really worth it because you know you can do Virago with 5+ men with normal overload fairly easily now. If you're doing Virago 4-man now though, which it does allow you to do, then yes, definitely worth doing it for 4-man. And again, in any other real PVM situation, whether it's solo or duo, if it's going to give you more DPS across that lengthier trip, it's going to allow you to do more kills in that trip. It's going to make your life a bit easier as well at that trip because you're going to be able to kill whatever you're killing faster, which means you're going to take less damage overall. Do you think this is worth it? Write down your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks as always for watching. Good luck on your PVM trips, and I'll see you on my next video.